Housekeepers working for motels, hotels, resorts, cruise ships. What is the most WTF? Weird, awkward situation scene that you have stumbled upon in work? My mom was a hotel general manager and I basically grew up in hotels. The worst was a man who hung himself in the hotel room. On Christmas Eve, he'd driven through the night to see his kids for Christmas, and his ex wouldn't let him see them. So he went back to his hotel room and hung himself. My mom is still traumatized over finding his body. After that, she organized a party in the hotel lobby for every Christmas Eve and always invited all the guests to try to get people out of their rooms and lift their spirits if they were spending Christmas in the hotel. Your mom sounds like a lovely lady. I worked front desk at a hotel and one guy brought in a mini propane grill and started grilling chicken in his room. We found out when the whole hall started to smell delicious. Unfortunately, we had to make him stop. Had this happen when I worked out west. An older couple, mid-50s, rented a room and checked into it about 3 o'clock. At 8 o'clock the fire alarms went off. When the firefighters arrived to check the building, they found a barbecue in this couple's room. Apparently the man was cooking his wife an anniversary dinner and had brought his portable George Foreman camping barbecue to do it. I was the night manager, and housekeeping told me there was blood on the walls. I went to the room, and OMG, the girl was shooting up something and obviously the blood had sprayed out everywhere. She tried to extend her stay. Turns out she was a crafty prostitute. She would have the first John pay her room through Expedia, and use it all night, then use the money to stay again. She was perma-banned after the blood though. I worked with a woman who was the head of housekeeping for a large hotel in the area who told me this story. There was this woman and her daughter who were local but checked in the hotel for a few days. One of the housekeepers comes to service the room one morning while the mom is outside by the pool. The housekeeper walks in and finds the girl in bed with blood everywhere. Turns out the girl came to town to have an abortion and mom needed to hide it from dad. The girl started hemorrhaging in her sleep while mom was already outside the room, and the housekeeper actually found her in time to save her life. The housekeeper was too distraught after all was said and done to clean the room. I can't remember if she quit. Another housekeeper was brought in to finish. Jesus Christ, that's traumatizing. Since there aren't many replies, I have a few I guess. I'm front desk in a hotel. My favorite was when I wasn't working. I actually just got off my shift when a large wedding party came back late at night, absolutely trashed, and eventually they all went to their rooms. A while later, the current desk person gets a call to the 4th floor immediately. Turns out, one woman's boyfriend locked her drunk butt out of the room, completely naked. Not one to complain. She decided to sleep it off on the couches we put in the elevator areas on each floor. Still naked, my co-worker went and put a blanket on her and she woke up and said she was going to sue. She peed on the couch and threw up on it, but eventually got back into her room. The next morning she was so embarrassed she ran past the front desk to leave. We had a naked drunk guy in the hall a couple months ago. Couldn't find his room, so he was knocking on doors, waking up random guests thinking their room was his. Completely shameless though. Checked out in the morning at the front desk acting like nothing happened. He was a business traveler too. The housekeeping staff at the hotel I used to work at would put all the dildos they found in a box. It was a tradition to wrap the box and give it to the boss, female, at the Christmas party. I used to work in a park with facilities for the campers that had to be cleaned every morning. One morning, the janitor, we'll call him Jose, comes into work and starts by cleaning the bathrooms. When he comes to the men's bathroom, a ranger sees him go in, come back out, put on a hazmat suit, and go back in. This actually wasn't as abnormal as you'd think, considering we'd get a lot of weirdos doing poop art on the walls. Anyways, Jose finishes up and heads over to the next set of campsites. Later that day, some campers find a body in the woods right behind the bathroom. Sure enough, dude had been stabbed to death in the bathroom. Police were not happy with Jose. Former hotel manager here. Check under your mattress if you stay in a hotel because odds are the housekeepers aren't bothering to lift up the mattress like they should. After you've lifted said mattress, go ahead and enjoy the copious amounts of pee that are left there for you. Seriously, people leave adult magazines and DVDs under those mattresses all the time. Quite often it's a regular guest who requests the same room and it's just their stash because they know the small Nepalese housekeeper won't lift the mattress even a little bit. I'm afraid I'll find something else. A story from my aunt who manages a hotel. A lady came in one day and asked if I could check on her 18-year-old son because he had been going through some rough times and she hadn't heard from him. I told her to stay in my office while I checked because I was worried what I would find. I opened the door to his room and he was laying on the floor like a wax figurine. There were needles everywhere, so I assumed he overdosed. I then had to go tell this kid's mom that her son was dead. Top 3. 1. Painted landscapes across 3 of the 4 walls. In crap. Surprisingly talented. 2. Used condoms placed over every light bulb in the room. Discovered when the condoms started to burn. 3. Had an employee give out the wrong keys to a room. Parents gave the keys to small children. They ran ahead and opened the door. Inside was a couple performing BDSM, complete with ball gag and crop. 50 Shades of Runaway. When I was younger I worked night reception in a real crappy rundown hotel. I took overnight shift from the afternoon shift and was given my handover. As per usual on the weekends we had our late checkouts and wake up calls for airport transfers. Come 2:45 am I called the guest in room 3405 but got no answer. Tried again a few more times and nothing still. Now as I had mentioned, this being such a crummy -3-star rat infested hotel from heck, we had a total staff of 1. So off I went, up 3 floors with the master key to fetch Mr. Collins. I knocked 3 times and no answer, so in I went. What I saw next will haunt me forever. Across the room in the double-doored fake mahogany closet was Mr. Collins, butt naked in a standing position, knees bent, shoulder slumped on the inside of the closet with a belt attached around his neck, buckle side attached to the closet rail, eyes closed and a great big smile on his face, dead as a dodo. So first aid training kicked in. I knew it was for nothing. The dude was cold as a well digger's ass. Called the ambulance and started CPR, but was obvious the guy was not coming back. Paramedics took over but was pronounced dead straight away. Working in the hospitality industry, you somewhat prepare yourself for grannies passing away in the middle of the night and the odd heart attack here and there, but never autoerotic asphyxiation related deaths. TLDR. Dude strangled himself for sexual pleasure. Could be saved. That must have traumatized you. I'm sorry, dude. Not a big thing but something I will always remember. I worked as a housekeeper in a 4-star hotel. It was quite an expensive place and we often had rich guests from the Middle East. This is relevant. The hotel, of course, had a spa area, and it was my duty to close this area around 10 PM, meaning to shoo the last guests out of the pool and sauna, clean everything and close it. One time I went to see if there were any guests still in the sauna, and when I opened the door there was a woman and man. I assumed they were husband and wife, sitting inside. He was naked, only with a towel around his waist, and she was fully veiled, wearing a head-to-toe chador, inside a 90°C sauna. Needless to say I was surprised. I don't care about religious clothing rules, to each his own I guess, but sitting inside a sauna fully veiled surely made me raise my eyebrows a little. Never worked at a hotel, but delivered pizza there. This one time this guy orders a pizza in the most rundown motel in town. I go out there, he says come on in. I usually will not go inside places, but for whatever reason I took one step in. There's a girl sitting in a haze on the bed, like non-responsive staring, wearing only underwear. I got my money and leave, not saying anything. I get halfway to the car and the guy leans out and say hey and gestures for me to come back. I'm a little nervous at this point as he's hanging out of his door, could have a gun in his other hand, and only approach halfway. He comes all the way out with more money, thankfully not a gun, and says here, have a little extra tip. The W gave me a discount when she saw the size of my dong with a big Olay smile on his face. I'm not sure if the discount is because it was big or small. Now I knew full well that I shouldn't have touched this nasty drugged out prostitute and sleazy guy money, but of course I did. One of my co-workers was vacationing in Mexico and decided buying weed was a good idea, and leaving said weed in a backpack in his hotel room. When they returned to their room, cops were rushing in and out of the room. They began to panic because they were sure they got busted for pot and were headed to a Mexican jail. The cops asked if this was their room and rushed them in. They told the guys to pack up and that they were getting a new room. The room was dark, so my friend opened the blinds. Someone had jumped from their balcony and landed on theirs, thus exploding all over the glass door. Yikes. I worked as a night auditor for a small town chain hotel in the early 1990s. On night, a nicely dressed businessman checked in on my shift. He came back up to the desk a few minutes later and rented a few movies. We had VCRs in the rooms back then. One of the movies was The Hunt for Red October. Just came out on video. The evening went pretty uneventful, but the next night when I came to work I received the news. Sometime during my shift he had blown his head off with a large handgun while in his bed. No one heard or saw this happen, and he was found by a maid about 1 PM the next day, and he had bled out. Because all of the maids were Haitian, none of them would clean up the mess. I went into the room and could see the huge pool of blood on the bed and the floor. It took them over a week to clean the room. It smelled terrible. As it turned out, the blood leaked under the floor and under the bed in the adjoining room that we still rented out, without knowing there was coagulated blood on the floor. We just kept airing the room out and spraying a lot of air freshener. To this day I have never seen The Hunt for Red October. Someone didn't rewind the tapes. I worked for a small golf resort for several years and this story still burns holes in my brain every time I tell it. So we have these small hotel rooms that contain 2 beds and a bathroom. I serviced fresh towels, it for 3 days and everything was normal. On checkout day, 6 men checked out. I seen them meet up with their wives GFS, who weren't staying with them at the front desk as I was clocking in. I walk into the unit after they left and there was crap and blood smeared everywhere. The walls, the sheets, the shower, and even the TV. There were about 20 condoms laying out on the heater attached to the wall. As I was removing the sheets to throw them away, 2 butt plugs with condoms still on them flopped out on the floor and one started vibrating. It had to be the most disturbing mess I had to clean up. And when I notified the front desk manager, he refused to bill them for leaving such a huge mess to clean up, and he said this is a place where people come to relax. If they want to let loose then so be it. I was so mad. But that is the whole reason you bill them extra. Which situation should I share? Alright, so a few girls and myself team up and clean these cottages for a state park. I usually clean bathrooms cause the girls don't wanna, and I'd rather do it cause frick it, just bleach everything and not have to worry about if crap in the kitchen is missing. Anyway, cleaning the bathroom when I hear my co-worker gag and tell me to come in the bedroom. I walk in and instantly smell something more foul than a chicken house. Look at the bed and there is a blood stain almost 4 feet wide, crotch level center of the bed. Yeah, someone gave birth to like the devil or something. I worked at a 7-story hotel in Illinois and one night a man tried to climb out a 7th-story window to the roof. A real daredevil. He fell to his death and the scene that followed was one of the most WTF moments of my life, and really changed my perception of people in general. It turned out that while climbing out the window his girlfriend tickled him, causing him to fall. Later, when outside, she screamed it over and over. I didn't mean to make him fall. I was only tickling him. I thought she would die just crying. In their panic, the 4 remaining people in the room took the elevator to the basement instead of the ground floor and proceeded to punch holes in the wall because they were so stoned and wasted they couldn't find their way out. One got out but the rest were down there for over an hour. When the woman finally got outside, where I headed after calling the police, she literally clawed at me and begged me to do CPR in spite of a gusher of blood coming out of his mouth. He was obviously done. It was a confusing and chaotic night after that. I was the manager on duty and so I was the one who let the police into the room. I watched the police chaplain gather up all the drugs and paraphernalia into a shopping bag, and he did a thorough search. too. There was tons of it, more drugs than I have ever seen before or since. It took hours to clean everything up, and the last thing to happen was the fire department hosing the blood away. What was so WTF that changed my view on people. The official police report stated that drugs were suspected to play a role, but none were found in the room. It was just stated that man fancied himself a daredevil and others in the room didn't notice he was gone for several minutes. All total lies. I'll never believe another police report as long as I live. I'll never believe another news story, even a small one. What happened and what was reported was so different I wondered if something had happened at another hotel the same night. So, not a funny story, but one of the most WTF nights of my life. Not a housekeeper, but a supervisor at a hotel. 2 weeks ago I get a call in the middle of the night from one of the bellmen telling me he needs help. I throw on some clothes and run over. I live across the street to find a drunk guy passed out in one of the lobby bathroom stalls amongst the single most foul odor I have ever smelled. Couldn't remember his room or who he was with. Turns out he had decided to take a crap in the hallway and then fell in it, smearing it all over himself and the floor. Ended with me having to call the police and him calling me mean. That was actually the second time a drunk guy pooped in our hallway. Also, a housekeeper once found a prostitute's menu of the services she performed, as well as a bag full of dildos. Big Dogs 17.50. There's an Indian casino near me that was originally just a casino. They then built a hotel. As a soft opening they invited tribe members and their families to stay for the weekend, just to work out any problems before they opened to the public. As it turns out, they had to re-renovate an entire floor of the hotel because they found 15 out of the 23 rooms on one floor turned into makeshift labs over these 2 days. All of the people that stayed in these rooms were family members of the people that worked at the casino. It was swept under the rug and nothing ever came of it. My dad works maintenance at an Indian casino and he says they always sweep things under the rug when it comes their tribe's elders' families. One group did over $10,000 in damage and he was instructed not to discuss it with anyone. Did maintenance for a hotel for a few months. The owner and his wife both were involved in the business. I walked into a room where the curtain rod was torn down. In there was the owner and our 18-year-old front desk worker. He gave me $2,000 cash to not tell his wife. I wasn't the housekeeper but I was the front desk manager at a nearby hotel. Walked into work one January morning at 6:50 am. Like usual, the gentleman who was our night auditor told me that he was happy to see me because he was about to call the police. I asked why and that is when the most unusual, strange, and frightening experience I've ever had while working the several years in the hotel business unraveled. In the dining room there was a very large man passed out in his bowl of oatmeal. Quite literally his face in his bowl. I rushed over to him and I immediately recognized this man as one of 2 men that frequent the hotel every month on business. I try waking him up. No use. Checked his pulse and all seemed to be fine but I was completely unable to get him to wake up so I yelled for the gentleman behind the desk to call 911. 2 minutes later 2 officers arrived at the hotel and I showed them to the man who looked rather lifeless in his bowl of oatmeal. The cops both attempted to wake him to which they were able. Keep in mind this man was about 6'4" and quite large. He jumps up and starts screaming oh crap, I just freaking fell asleep. What the frick is this all over me? The cops replied that he passed out in his breakfast and asked him if he'd had any drugs or alcohol in his system to which he replied alright, you caught me. I might have done some blow last night. Okay, maybe more than some. The cops came back and asked me if I would direct them back to his room so they could check on the man who was staying there as well. 2 minutes after I gave them a room key they called to the front desk and requested that I come up. I knew something was weird but I did not expect what I walked into. Every piece of furniture was broken. They used the lamps to cook their drugs. I was young, naive, and clueless and knew nothing about that until the cop told me. They took massive shoots in the bathtub, then smeared the crap all over the walls. They had a gerbil running around the room. They had several sex toys laying around the room. The second guy was nowhere to be found. I pulled up the security footage that showed that he left the building at 3:15 am, and they ended up arresting the other. 2 housekeepers quit that morning after refusing to touch the room. The second guy came back around 1 in the afternoon and I had the misfortune of having to call the police, ban him from the property, and listen to his threats of shoving a freaking rocket up my butt. Never experienced anything quite like that again. This story is my brother's, but what the heck. True story anyway. He worked in a bigger hotel in the center of Amsterdam. He was a minibar filler for the rooms, so normally they knock about 3 times before going into rooms. He had 1 room. No answer. So he went inside to start filling up the mini bar. As he goes in, he sees a small black case in the middle of the room. A second later, a skinny naked guy pops up from behind the wall holding a dildo and stuffing euros in my brother's hand. At this point, my brother sees the money and plays along for the moment. The guy opens the briefcase and summons a gigantic dildo from it and starts inserting this massive thing into his now pulsing anus. My brother stands there in slight awe as the guy tells him to wait and stuffs more money in his hands. This all is happening very quickly. Next thing my brother knows is he is holding a lot of money now. The guy has placed himself on a small stool and is begging my brother to start smacking him on the butt with one of those table tennis bats from heck. Black leather with metal pins on them. My brother sees the money again, starts smacking the guy on his butt like 3 or 4 times before hitting him so hard he falls off the stool. My brother leaves with the money. The guy still begging for more. Brother tells management, "Guy's banned from the hotel." I never laughed as hard as I did hearing this story. He did have a lot of money, but still kinda felt like a W. Got a pulsing anus and scanned up for a U Vargas check and scanned down for a Loch Ness Monster 350. I call it the Reddit double tap. Not a housekeeper, but we went to a Lions game and had the cheap butt of the group plan everything, including the hotel, at $80 a room in downtown Detroit. We walk into the lobby to a 5 feet 3 inches black guy that has a leash and spike chain around this probably 5 minutes, and 10 seconds white girl with piggy tails, who's probably 300 plus pounds. This is a story I will never forget and happy to share. This woman at the hotel bar started drinking too much and she was also with her boss and colleagues. She was probably about 30 and really pretty, but she started to get angry and started cussing because we cut her off. She wouldn't stand for this blasphemy, and instead of just going upstairs by herself to her room and just tearing apart the mini fridge like Denzel from Flight, she decided to take the high road. Long story short, she punched her boss in the face and then took off around the hotel. Now, the hotel is oval shaped, so she was basically doing laps. Every time she ran past the bar, she would run screaming and giving the middle finger to all her colleagues. Some staff started chasing her and we called the cops. On one of her last laps, she ran up, squatted down in her skirt and started taking the biggest crap. I mean, she literally squatted, looked up and had the same face of the girl from The Exorcist and just shat all over the floor. This vile pile of disgusting fury rushed out of her butt, and the whole time she was just screaming at the top of her lungs and also was kind of barking like a dog. She was doing this in front of everyone at the bar, including everyone she works with. Then she just stood up and started running again as crap was still streaming down her leg. At this point, none of her colleagues were saying anything and they were just staring in awe. As I was behind the bar laughing hysterically, I remember her boss just so calmly saying, "Well, that B is fired." The laughing continued from the staff side. All the colleagues were as quiet as a funeral. The stench, by the way, was repulsive. She was arrested, obviously, out of the office yet, and the boss left the entire staff a great tip. I am gonna go ahead and stop reading past this one. Winner. A lot of regular stuff like destroyed toilets, drunken shenanigans, kebab locked in a hotel safe for a couple weeks, and people passed out in hallways, but the stories I tell most often are vast quantity of clear liquid dripping from the ceiling of a 5 hotel bedroom ceiling. Oh crap, a leak. Call the maintenance guy. Nah, it was lube. Couple in a double room requested clean towels, bedding. Knock loudly. Announce housekeeping. A guy's voice shouts, "Sure, come in," and when I open the door he's standing right in front of the door with his girlfriend blowing him. I apologize and start backing away. She keeps right on going. I was kind of envious of her concentration skills. In a hostel made up of mostly dorm rooms with those false ceiling tiles that can be lifted up, we got complaints of noises in the roof throughout the day. Each time I went to investigate, there was nothing in the room and no noise while I was there. This happened several times until I went into one room and found a wonky ceiling tile. So I climbed onto a top bunk and lifted the tile up. Just inside I found an empty half of vodka. I looked around and about 3 feet away is a stinking drunk, stinking backpacker staring at me. He'd been scampering around in the roof like a giant rat for the whole day. I shouted at him to get down and ended up grabbing him by the ankle until he gave in and slithered down onto the bed. People do crazy crap in hotels, man. Some of the lost property is pretty good too. Dildos, vibrators, a lamp, a cardboard cutout of a male stripper, a surfboard, 2 scuba tanks. Where on earth do you get that much lube though? Holy crap. Used to work part-time for a cleaning company. We used to find all sorts of crap. We used to find positive pregnancy tests all the time but didn't want to congratulate them. Sometimes we knew before the husbands even knew. Things like bongs and other drug paraphernalia in teenagers' rooms. My favorite story to tell is when this sweet old lady asked us to clean because her son was visiting. She was telling us how her son brought home his friend, male, from college. When cleaning the room he was staying in we found a tube of Astroglide. I don't think she knew her son was gay and I sure as hell didn't have the heart to tell her. My aunt and uncle had a maid. I saw her come into my cousin's room, pull the bong out of its hiding place, dust it off, and put it back. I think I'm the only person who knew she spoke English as well. Hope I'm not too late to the party. My family owns and operates a 3-star motel in a decently big city in New England. I've spent 14 of my 25 years living here. So many weird or WTF things have been witnessed by my brother and I. When I was about 15 we had hired a full-time maintenance guy that lived on property and was on call 24/7. Spring and summers are very busy times due to conventions and the like, so he is a welcome addition to the staff family. Most of our staff has been with us for 10 plus years, and we treat them like it too. The maintenance guy, we'll call him Mike, was a hard-working, no-nonsense, straight to the point yes man. As a kid I never really paid attention to the numerous odd tattoos on his body, or the gold teeth, or his love of chains. To me he was the guy who was awesome since he always helped me practice my baseball skills. One day out of the blue he says he needs a few days off to go handle some personal business. A few days after he leaves we got a call from a detective asking if Mike is on the property, to which my dad replies he went out for a bit. Within 10 minutes of the call we have a SWAT team busting into his room and raiding the place. Turns out Mike was a former gangbanger who had numerous arrest warrants out on him. He had run away with his girlfriend who was a 20-something at the time, and her parents had known their relationship. So when the girl didn't come home one night they called the cops. The SWAT team found automatic assault rifles, a sawed-off shotgun, and numerous handguns under his bed, along with a huge wad of cash. TLDR. Childhood spent living at a motel. Basketball mentor was a former gangbanger with mad guns under his bed. Could have killed us all. Just as a note, most people could kill you. The ones who are dangerous are the ones who would kill you. I used to work front desk at a resort and once in a while I'd have to be the runner and go around delivering gifts and packages to guests' rooms. The protocol was to knock, say front desk delivery and wait, then repeat twice more. If no one answered then you can enter and leave the package or gift basket on the hallway table. One time after the knocks and calling out no one answered and I entered cautiously and said hello, it's front desk delivery. I'm just leaving a basket on the hall table. And I walked in. No one replied. So I went to put the basket on the table but in order to get there I had to walk past the bathroom. The door was open and I looked in and got a full frontal of a man coming out of the tub. He looked at me. I ran past, dropped the basket on the table and scurried out without looking into the bathroom. He later called the back room and someone confirmed that a runner was sent up to leave a gift. I had already mentioned to everyone what I witnessed. I got laughed at. That wasn't the creepiest but it was the most embarrassing for me. Well, tell us the creepiest story. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.